Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my introductory lecture and syllabus review for systems analysis, which is course INFOST340, section 201 in the fall of 2017. I do have a video that you might want to play first, and I have a link to it on the weekly schedule. It's called Tips on Playing Kevin's YouTube Videos. So if you haven't listened to that, please do. Okay, so welcome to the course. This is a fun course for me. I've been a working systems analyst now for, 40 years. And I enjoy the activity. I've done a lot of it. I've used many different approaches as the approaches that were popular in the field have shifted. They're still shifting, and we'll be talking about that during the class. And so I'm sort of a practitioner of systems analysis, a student of systems analysis, a longtime coach of people who want to become systems analysts, and I like it, and I'm hoping that you're going to like it too. What we're looking at now is we're looking at the schedule for week one of our class, and I just want to point out that we have a weekly schedule, and here's the index page. So if you go to our D2L site and you click through on the link for our weekly schedule, you'll come to this pretty simple HTML site that I have, on which I keep the weekly schedules of all of the classes that I teach. You typically come first to an index page, and this has all the weeks of the semester. Something that needs some improving and may get it in the next couple weeks is that the navigation on this page is not as obvious as it really should be. So the way that you get to the detailed schedule pages for each of the weeks is you hover over the week number, and now you'll see that the color changes because they are links. So if you wanted to get the schedule for week one, you hover over week number 1 and click, and there we are. And if we wanted to get to week number 16, you would get to that. So that explained, I hope I won't have to apologize for the less than perfect interaction design that we have there. So let's look at week one. This is what we're about to start. And I've got really two groupings. One is on Tuesday evening from 7:30 to 8:30. I am showing an optional session that I'd like you to join if you can. And I call this an online office hours lab session. And this is the thing that I started doing about 2 years ago for the online classes that I was teaching at UWM, and it's been working pretty well. In my face-to-face classes, one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing is going over the assignments that we've done. This is a class where you learn by doing. And so during online office hours, at times when we're not doing these weekly assignments, we call them skills practice assignments, well, then we talk about other things. we talk about whatever is on somebody's mind. But in weeks when we have had a skills practice assignment, what I typically do is have typically 2 of the students or more, if more people are interested, show us what they did. And what do you do in these assignments? Well, you do a diagram, or you do a specification. And these are things that we learned about during lectures. These are things that you've seen me demonstrate in tutorials. Now, you've had your chance. And now we're going to talk through how people did and what the various alternatives are. Not everybody does everything exactly the same. And a lot of the learning actually goes on when you're discussing things. So these sessions, because of the nature of the rules at UWM, I have to make them optional. But I recommend them highly, and I certainly recommend that you come as often as you can. For those who are unable to make a particular meeting, you'll see down here under other resources, I record those sessions and I post the link the next day. So if it happens to be a week when you're not able to make it and you want to see how people solve this assignment, well, there's your chance to see it. I also posted a copy of my solution on the D2L site. So you'll have that to look at in more detail. The other thing that we do is that people pretty typically are already either working on or thinking about the skills practice assignment for the next week. And there are questions. Well, how do I do this? And should I do, should I do it one way or the other? Well, we talk through it. I ask for people's ideas. I give examples and all of that kind of stuff. So this is a pretty hands-on and practical course, and the online office hour lab sessions are very practical. And then, of course, we can talk about whatever is on the mind of the participants. So I hope that you'll find a way to get either to all of them or to a lot of them. I know that some people have conflicts with either other classes or work or some family obligation. So I realize that certainly perfect attendance at these is not really possible, but I think we generate a lot of value, so I'd like you to come when and if you can. The second thing I have here is what I call a weekly assignment deadline. These are your assignments for the week, okay? And with one exception, they're all at Sunday night at 11:55 p.m. So our class week starts on Monday morning at 12:01 a.m. and it runs through Sunday night. I make the deadline 11:55 because it's easy to pick that on D2L. And it gives you the idea that you shouldn't wait till 11:59 to try to upload things. Okay? And here you can see this is a pretty typical week. I have a list of the topics we're going to cover for the week. If there are readings that you're required to read, they're listed under required readings. If there are recordings, typically YouTube videos like this one, they're listed here. And class participation assignments due are typically forum posts that I'm expecting you to make. Now, we don't have a lot of required forum posts in terms of they have to be done by a particular day, but this introduce yourself as an exception to that. So I've already created this introductions forum, and I would like each of you before the end of this class week, at the end of the day on Sunday, September 10th, to have posted this introduce yourself to the introductions forum. Okay, and it should be pretty obvious where to put it. So this is the organization of the course. I would like to say that I have the schedule content in the schedule for the whole semester, but I don't. Okay, things have been very busy for me. I was teaching 3 summer courses this summer, and today is Friday. I just finished the grading for the summer on Tuesday, so I'm very quickly trying to get together the courses that I have for next week. Because of that, if you go right now today, if you click on next to get to week 2, you'll see that it's under construction. Okay. Now I'll have all the content up there soon. Sometimes pieces of content are not available yet. In particular, something like a lecture video or tutorial that I have not recorded yet. There's usually a placeholder for that here. So right now you can see there's a placeholder for the video that that I'm currently recording. So it says lecture video, what the title is, that it's not available yet, and the expected availability date. Okay, and typically I will get it recorded and uploaded by that date. Sometimes on that date, but hopefully just before that date. And this gives me an opportunity to show you what I'm going to want you to play without having to have every little thing done at the beginning of the semester. Okay? Now, as content changes in the weekly schedule, I update it. Okay? And the next time you view that page, you should get the you should see the new version of the content for that week. It used to be that people had to sometimes reload their page. They had to go up and click on reload the page to get the new version. I pretty well think I've solved that. I had some residual problems in the Safari browser. I think that's pretty well solved now. So you should not have to reload the page, but if you see a page of the schedule that you're thinking, I thought Kevin said that he updated that. Well, reload the page. I'm pretty sure you're not going to have to. Anytime I change something that is on our D2L site or on our weekly schedule, particularly when I add content or say I record a lecture that I promised, so there was just an available by message, and now I have the real link. After I post it to the site, I typically announce it in 2 ways. One is in the D2L announcements section, I post an announcement. And the second thing is I copy that and I send it to the members of the class by email. So if you're watching your email, you should know any kind of update or news or announcement that's happening related to the class. All right, so that's a lot of practicality. This week we've got 2 readings in the first week. One is the syllabus, and the other, which I'm going to walk through in a minute, and the other one is a really cool brochure from the American Institute of Architects in Minnesota. And this is, I'll just kind of click through on that. This is a brochure about how people work with architects who design homes. And I believe that the way people work with architects in designing their homes is a lot the way people should work with systems analysts as they design their systems. And I talk about that in the lecture, What Does a Systems Analyst Do? Okay, so that's how those tie together. So let's take a look at the syllabus. Instead of looking at it in the browser, I like to typically to look at it in the Adobe viewer. So that's what we're looking at now. So let's walk through the syllabus and try to set expectations. Title, Introduction to Systems Analysis. This is the fall of 2017. The course number is INFOST340. The section is 201. We meet online. Okay. In fact, we do, in terms of the optional office hours lab session, we do actually meet online. But for the most part, meeting online is a euphemism. The instructor, I'm Kevin Trainer. Here's my email. Here's my mobile number. Okay. I do give that out so that students can call. The other way I talk to students is, and this is probably the predominant way I talk to students, the university has given me, or SOAS has given me, an account on the GoToMeeting platform. And the way I prefer to talk to students about things having to do with the course is using the GoToMeeting platform. So a lot of times, if there's time for us to call, instead of talking on my mobile, we'll arrange for a time for us to meet on GoToMeeting, and we'll arrange that by email. Okay, that gives me the opportunity to show you stuff and you the opportunity to show me stuff using our computers. I do have an office at SOAS. It's on the 3rd floor, the one where the business office is. I'm in room 3472, just a few doors away from the business office. I talked pretty extensively about these online office hours lab sessions. We're going to have them on Tuesday evenings. And if I recall, they're from 7:30 to 8:30. Let's just pop that up again. Yeah, 7:30 to 8:30. Okay. There's a link to join the right session, and there's a link right here. Okay, and there's also a link further down in the syllabus. Okay. When you join us, I ask a couple of things. One is that when you type in your name, you type in your full name, so I know who's there. It's really funny. You think your first name will do, but the fact is we always seem to get more than one person of the same first name. And sometimes we'll get 3 and occasionally 4. And so when I'm trying to keep track of who's talking on this platform, I can see who's talking. It puts your name up. but if it puts the name up, Andrew, and we have 3 Andrews, well, that doesn't really help me a whole lot. Okay, so log in with your full name and use a headset. Without a headset, we can get into situations where we're trying to converse and we get feedback going. So headsets are pretty affordable. You don't need a great one. You can probably do this with certainly a $20 headset and maybe a less expensive one. Okay, I've done enough to sell that. I hope you're going to come by. So this is a course in systems analysis, okay? So let me, the catalog description is what we put in the university catalog. Now mine is, it's an introductory course in systems analysis for computer-based information systems. Systems analysts are primarily responsible for eliciting user requirements, proposing a system solution that meets those requirements, and creating a model of the requirements in a proposed solution that can be understood both by the system users and the developers. So the systems analyst sits between the users of the system and other stakeholders who are either going to pay for the development or have some skin in the game in some way, between them and the people who are going to develop the system or provide the system if it's coming from some kind of outside source. So it's a really exciting job. It's in a really important role. Systems analysts also get involved in project identification. That's before the project start, project planning, project management, and then supervision of detailed systems design and supervision of system construction. So this isn't an all-the-time role for systems analysts, but quite often they're asked to continue on the project and be kind of answer people or guiding people when the system is being built. The audience for this course includes anyone who's interested in the analysis and design of computer-based information systems, and I would hope that's you. Okay, textbook. Our textbook is it's a book that I've been using for quite a while. It's by Hoffer, Velasic, Hopper, George, and Velasic. I knew there was a third person. I call it the Hoffer book. Okay. It's a pretty good systems analysis book, and that's high praise for me because there's a lot of these, and they share something in common. One is that no one of them is perfect. The second is that they're all very expensive. So this one, the Hoffer book, I believe to be the least imperfect. And it is as expensive as all the rest. They're up to about $250 now, which is outrageous. This one's been around since 2014, so I'm hoping that some of you can get a used copy. There are electronic copies that are less expensive. There's also, although I didn't see it when I was on Amazon the other day, there has been an international version of this text, which is a paperback rather than a hardback, and it has slight differences from the U.S. version, but none that will harm. So get some version of the 7th edition of the Hoffer book and try your best to control your expenses. And I kind of feel the same way about these textbook publishers that I feel about the pharmaceutical companies. On one hand, I like their products because they help us a lot. On the other hand, I can't quite understand why they have to charge quite so much for their products. And they really seem to be sucking it to us in this particular area. We are going to be using software. Okay, so the primary thing that we're going to use is we're going to use diagramming software called Microsoft Visio Professional 2016. This is a Windows application. It's a Windows application that's free to students at SOAS. So, like a lot of IT-related departments, SOAS is part of this Microsoft Imagine program, in which some small subset of their products are available to students and faculty for free. And one of the things that's available is Visio. Okay. How do you get that? Well, you go to, you follow the link that I'm showing on the page here. In fact, we can chase that down. So this will take you to one of the pages in the SOAS website, the one for the IT department. And down here, there's eAcademy, free software. So you open up that, okay? And you log in. There are two sets of products. There's one set of products from Microsoft, and there's a set of products from VMware. To get Visio, you go to the Microsoft part. If you have any trouble getting into this eAcademy site, you can call the SOAS help desk, and they're very good at helping you to solve those kinds of problems. Okay. Now, let's go back to where we were in the syllabus. Okay. Now, my preference is that the product that you load is Visio Professional 2016. Some people have found if they don't have a recent copy of Microsoft Office, they have an older copy of Office, that when they go to install Visio Professional 2016, they're told that, well, they can do that. This is part of the install dialog. They can do that, but first they have to install a newer version of Microsoft Office. Well, for some people that's fine. They've been waiting to, to bite the bullet and install a newer version of Microsoft Office for a long time, and this is their excuse. The workaround, though, if you're committed to an older version of Microsoft Office, is you can also download Visio Professional 2013. It's pretty close to 2016. The good thing about 2016 is I've used the 2016 version for all the tutorials that I've done. So if you want to be able to follow along exactly with what I have, use the 2016. But if you're boxed in by the requirement that you have to change out your version of Office, and that's unappealing to you, there's also should be a version, a downloadable version of Visio Professional 2013, which is the workaround to that. Okay. Now, Visio is a Windows-only product. quite a few of our students are not using Windows on their own machine. I, for one, am a Mac user. Fairly recent convert, about 4 years ago. But I'm fully into Mac, and I don't have a Windows machine at my disposal at all. So how could you use Visio if you don't have Windows? Well, one easy thing to do is to use the SOAS Virtual Lab. So the SOAS Virtual Lab gives you virtual access to a Windows machine. And that Windows machine should have Visio 2016 on it. Okay? And there's a link here for the SOAS Lab. And follow directions. And again, if you're having problems there, talk to the SOAS help desk. These guys are very good at helping with these kinds of issues. They've helped me quite a bit. Now, let's say that you have a Mac, right? I realize that some people might be using Linux, and if you're using Linux, I don't have a direct solution for you. Well, you can use the virtual lab. But let's say you're running Mac OS. What I do is I run Windows on my Mac as a virtual machine using VMware Fusion. VMware Fusion is available to us at SOAS for free through this eAcademy system. Okay. So I'm going to click through on that, and we come to the IT page and eAcademy. Okay, and when you log in, you get the choice of saying, do you want Microsoft software or VMware software? And you go to VMware software. And what we want to download is VM Fusion 8. Now, I have to admit that this appeals to the more technical of us. First of all, you need a Mac that has some heft to it in terms of the amount of memory that you have and the amount of free disk space you have. No problem for me. Second of all, you have to be willing to do an install of a new product you've not worked with before. That was always fun for me. Third is that once you get VM Fusion installed, well, then you have to install a Windows operating system under VMware Fusion. Okay? Well, that's not so hard to do, at least for me. And the Windows operating system is available for free through this Microsoft Imagine program. So you can install both VMware Fusion 8 from this eAcademy, and you could download Windows 10 and create what we call a guest operating system on VMware Fusion for Windows 10, and then you can install Visio 2016 under that, and it'll work just fine. Okay, so some people are kind of put off by that. I love doing this. I have quite a bit, well, quite a few classes where my students are using both, some are using Windows and some are using Mac. So I teach the Windows part, a demo of the Windows part using one of these virtual machines all the time. Okay? And I've gotten pretty good at it, and I think that you could too. Okay, enough for software. Okay. The course topics. The course topics correspond to a subset of the chapters in the Hoffer book. Okay. Understanding the role of the systems analyst, which we're covering in week 1, does not require the Hoffer book. Okay, that requires the resources that I showed you when we were looking at the week 1 schedule. That's good news. That gives you a week to get your hands on the Hoffer book. Okay. The next things, the systems development environment, origins of software, initiating and planning systems development projects, determining system requirements, structuring system data requirements, designing interfaces and dialogues, designing distributed internet systems implementation, and maintaining information systems. These are all chapters from the Hoffer book that we're going to go over in that order. Okay? So all of our readings, or most of our readings, are going to come from the Hoffer book. So what are the objectives that I have for you in the course? Well, I'd like you to be able to explain the role of the systems analyst in understanding the needs and managing the expectation of project stakeholders. Project stakeholders, as we're going to learn, are people who have an interest in the project, have some skin in the game. They could be users, they could be funders. We're even going to talk about the fact that the stakeholders could be people who are potential opponents of the project. They just don't like it. They want to get in its way. Explain how to identify and initiate a viable project. Explain how to plan, elicit, and gather system requirements effectively. Create a model of system requirements that can be used to get informed approval of the stakeholders. So one of the major deliverables that you're going to have is this thing that we call a systems analysis report, and that's going to constitute that model. So that's going to be a big thing you're going to work on. Suggest a preliminary design for an effective system solution that meets the requirements. Another thing you're going to hand is a thing called the proposed solution, and that's that document. Create a model of the requirements that can be used either to construct a new information system or serve as the basis for selecting a vendor-supplied information system. Well, those are things that you'll do from those project-related hand-ins that I talked about already. Explain the potential role of the systems analyst in supervising the creation of detailed system design specification, as well as the construction, testing, and approval of the system solution. It's not always the case that systems analysts will hang around to play a supervision role in the construction phase, but it's pretty common. So we talk about what that role would be and how you could play it. And write a report that persuades stakeholders that the proposed system should be implemented. That's probably, again, our proposed solution, which is the last of your project hand-ins. So let's look at the methods that we're going to use. You have the readings. You have the recorded lectures and tutorials. Discussion posts via D2L forums. Discussion during online office hour lab sessions, student presentation of their solutions as skills practice assignments during those online office hour lab sessions, quizzes. In the beginning of the semester, where we're kind of building up our general skills, we don't have you doing these skills practice assignments yet. I think we start on those in about chapter 7. So what do we do before that? Well, we have weekly quizzes. on the content that's coming from the chapters and the lectures. Skills practice assignments, they start with Chapter 7 and they go to the very end. And then the student project, which I'll talk about in a minute. I've already shown you the course schedule. The course schedule is an application that I built, and we have a link to it. So if you click through on the link here, you'll go to the index page for our course. Okay. Work required of students. This is a pretty busy course. I estimate that this is going to take about 145 hours of work over the course of the semester. How much time it's going to take you is going to depend on how facile you are with these things that we're learning. It's going to take some people less time. It's going to take some people more. Some people have some related experience, or maybe they have a natural aptitude. These are things that any of you can learn. I don't think that there's anybody here who can't be good at this. But there'll be variations in how much time it's going to take. Now, your grade is going to be based upon your work output rather than the number of hours that you put into it. So provided that you're willing to put the work in, everybody should be able to get an A. The readings are, for the most part, from the Hoffer text. We have a couple in week 1 here that are not from Hoffer. I want you to read them as the first thing that you do. Here's what I think works. Do the readings, play the lectures and the tutorials, do the hands-on assignments last. Okay, that's the way I design them, and that's the way I think you'll get the most out of them. The video tutorials, I think I've already talked about. Okay, play those before you do the hand-ins. Participation. Even though this is an online course, it's very important for me to be able to elicit your participation. So here are the ways that you can participate. And I just want to point out that participation is 10% of your overall grade. Right? Now, I had a student a couple of semesters ago who was in the online version of this class. It's probably a year ago. And he said, "Well, this participation, this is not important. This is not what I need to do to learn." And we had a long talk in which I said, "Well, it might seem like it's not. It might seem like what you need to learn from the course you can get from doing the readings and playing the recordings and doing your work. But what you would miss in thinking that is that systems analysis work is highly interpersonal. Okay, there's a lot of interviewing. There's a lot of making presentations. There's a lot of working in groups. There's a lot of facilitating compromise. There's a lot of problem solving, right? And so if there ever was a course in which class interaction was an important element to build relevant skills, this is probably it. Okay, so participation is important and it is relevant to exactly what we're learning how to do. Here are the things that you can do. The first thing in week 1, you're required to post an introduction to yourself in the Introduce Yourself forum. I think it's actually called the Introductions forum, and the topic is called Introduce Yourself. Regular posts to the open discussion forum. Now for me, posts in the open discussion forum are pretty much interchangeable with speaking in the online office hours lab session, right? So people will say to me, well, as you'll see here, you get a participation credit for the online office hours lab sessions. And people will say to me, well, my job's then, and I can't come to that session. And yeah, I'll play the recordings. I think that's good. But how do I get my participation credit? And I say, well, then you're kind of left with the open discussion forum, right? So the more active you are on that, the higher you're going to score in terms of your participation. Okay. So the My Group forum is just the opportunity to do all that kind of stuff. We're going to have groups, right? These are kind of study groups that I'm forming for you to work on your projects. And each group is going to have either their own forum, or I'm pretty sure I can create a forum where you all get your own section. So you're going to have a My Group forum once I form the groups. And this is going to be a study group support group. And again, where's the value here? Well, the value here is that some of the stuff is pretty murky. Okay, so as you're working on your projects, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, I want you to be able to talk to people in your group about what their thoughts are. Well, I was thinking I would do this, or I'm thinking I would do that, even to the extent that, well, I wrote this section of the systems analysis report, and I think it's complete, but what do you guys think? Okay, I set the groups up so everybody in a group is working on a different case, right? So you can show each other your work, and you can comment on it and make suggestions. That's all fair and encouraged, okay? Again, in the real world, that's what systems analysts do. Systems analysts will often show some document that they're working on to one of their colleagues, and they'll go, do you think this really captures it? Perhaps I'm too close to it. What do you think? All right. So you guys have the opportunity to do that there. You get credit for all your posts to My Group forum. I expect students to read all the posts to these forums and to make responses with short posts when appropriate. And in terms of participation credit, you get credit for those as well. I talked pretty specifically already about online office hour lab sessions, okay? So I'm not going to describe them again. And again, this part B, the language in here is pretty much, I think, a copy of the language is up in the top of the syllabus, okay? So please note that participation in the sessions is optional. For those who are unable to attend, I will post links to recordings of the sessions to our weekly schedule on the following day. Sometimes the same day, but these things are over at like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and some days I just have to go to bed because sometimes I'm up at 5 in the morning to get up to Milwaukee on time for classes up there. So 5 in the morning till 8:30 at night is a long day. Participation grades will be based on the number of participation points earned during the semester. These are the activities through which you can earn participation points. One post to a forum is worth 1 point. Sometimes these introductions I gave a few more points to. Those longer introduction posts, I usually count as a couple of posts. One speaking contribution during online office hours lab session. Okay. The really big thing that I give a lot of credit for is showing your work when we are reviewing the solutions to the skills practice assignments. I give 5 points for that. It takes some courage to do it. It's a great way to learn yourself, but what you're doing is helping everybody learn. I mean, even if you give a solution that's fairly imperfect, okay, our talking through how it's imperfect and how it could be made more perfect is a learning opportunity for everybody, okay, and for for exposing yourself, for being that brave. You get 5 points. You get a lot of points, right? Quizzes I mentioned already. They'll start in week 2. Probably go, I think there'll be 4 or 5 or 6 of them, something like that. Once we get to week 7 and we have skills practice assignments, we won't have any more quizzes. Skills practice assignments. When we're learning systems analysis, starting when we get to chapter 7, when we're learning about data flow diagramming, there just are a bunch of skills to practice, right? And so I'm going to have you do whatever the skill is that we're learning that week. In chapter 7, it will be the context diagram, the highest level data flow diagram. And we'll take a try. We have a practice case, okay? There's a case called iSchool Web Store. Okay, and this is a case that I've been using for a number of years. It's about a web store that we want to build to sell t-shirts and mugs and things like that, water bottles, bookmarks, those kind of things for our iSchool. Okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to practice the systems analysis on that. So we're all going to do the practice on the same case, iSchool Web Store. Okay? So we're going to do every single thing that we learn how to do. We're going to learn how to do it for iSchool Web Store. Okay? It's really important that you give this a try and hand it in on time. Okay? Give it a good faith try to all parts of the assignment and hand it in on time. Why? Well, you learn by doing. Okay? You're not going to learn by watching. I mean, you'll watch, you'll learn some of it by watching. But I have a method of teaching that I got from how they train surgeons. And actually, I learned about this on the TV show Grey's Anatomy. But I've looked it up, and it's accurate. This is how they train surgeons. They call it watch one, do one, teach one. So they say for a surgeon, somebody who's training to be a surgeon, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to observe the procedure. All right? So, and then the second thing that you're going to do is when you move on to the next phase, then you're going to do the procedure. Somebody will probably watch you to make sure you don't kill the patient, but you'll do it. And then when you've really mastered it, you'll turn around and you'll teach it to another person. Okay? And those are kind of 3 like benchmarks in your learning. You know, when you're ready to watch one, when you're ready to do one, when you're ready to teach one. So for us, the watch one's going to happen when you play the tutorial that's associated with that that assignment. You'll watch me do one on some demonstration case. It won't be iSchool Web Store, which is what you're going to be doing. I've got yet another case that I do that on. Okay, so that'll be your watch one. Your do one will be when you do the skills practice assignment. And there's a lot of learning here. Stuff that's easy to watch is harder to do. Okay, there's a lot of judgment here. There's particularly judgment about things like how detailed to be, how summarized to be. What context is this in? If you don't struggle with that kind of stuff, if you just see a solution, you'll kind of go, oh yeah, that's great. That's a great solution. But you'll not really know what it was like to do it. Okay. Our teach one is when I ask people to review their solutions in this online office hours lab session. Okay. People who can walk us through what they did and why they did it and where they had trouble or what their misgivings were. That's the kind of recitation that's part of teaching, because the rest of us are going to learn from that. So if you get the opportunity to do all these things, you have done a watch one, do one, teach one. If you just listen and watch while other people say what they've done, and then you go attempt it yourself later, there is some value in it. There's just less. Okay? You're not going to be fully ready. Because it's really another watch. It's like watch one, kind of copy that, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So, that's the way we work on these. So, I give a lot of credit for handing these things in on time. So, let's go down and talk about the grading rubric for a skills practice assignment. Okay? There are two parts. There are two things that I really want to promote. One is really kind of clerical and organizational. If not everybody submits their work in the right kind of file and properly named and properly formatted, it takes forever to grade these. It takes forever to grade these as it is, but when you're getting files that are not properly named or they're in the wrong format, it can double and triple and quadruple the amount of time it takes to grade one. So that's the first part. You're going to get points for a proper file submission. And the other one is for submitting your work on time and having it be a good faith effort on all parts of the assignment. So 10 points will be awarded for submitting a single properly named and properly formatted file to the proper D2L assignment submission activity. Okay. You would think that would be easy, but I can tell you from experience that some people find that very difficult. Somewhere along all those propers, they break down. Okay? And then our grading job just gets astronomically hard for no good reason. Then for the work itself, for the content, I guarantee that if you do the content the right way and hand it in on time, you'll get 75 points for the content. So a minimum of 75 points will be awarded for submissions that are submitted on time and that demonstrate a good faith effort on all parts of the assignment. Late submissions will be awarded 74 points or less in this category. So, what's the implication here? Well, if you do everything the right way in terms of formatting and naming the file, and you submit it to the right place on D2L on time, and you show good faith effort in all parts of the assignment, you just don't make a token stab, you look like you tried all parts of it, you're guaranteed to get an 85, which is a B. Okay? But if you can't follow directions and you can't get it in on time, you're not going to score well. All right? So, you'd be surprised how people learn to do all this stuff pretty quickly. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to talk about is the project assignment. Okay? So, let me back up to the skills practices. We just learn a series of tools and techniques to use in systems analysts work, and we learn them one after the other, and we learn how to do them in by doing the skills practices assignments on a practice case iSchool web store. Then, once that's underway, I assign everybody a case for their project. And it's a case like iSchool web store in its comprehensiveness. They mostly have to do with fictitious small businesses in Wisconsin. Okay. There's one that has to do with a kayak touring company. There's one that has to do with a craft brewery. There's one that has to do with a dairy farm. Okay, and there are 5 of them. Okay, and we get so I assign them out in a pattern so that I can form these study groups. Okay. And we can have study groups of up to 5 in which nobody has the same case. Okay? In which I encourage you to really interact a lot and ask each other for help and advice, because that's what systems analysts do. They just don't do each other's work. So to the extent that you're not working on the same case, well, one, as you're exchanging things, you get to see a lot more cases. And 2, I think that you're sharing expertise in just the perfect way for people who are learning systems analysis. So that's why I do it. So in the skills practices, we go through a succession of, let's say there are 10 skills that we practice, or 11, something like that. Well, you're going to do the same ones for your actual project. You're just going to do them a week later or 2 weeks later. So I expect you to, pretty soon after we start the skills practice assignments, I expect you to begin to work on the work for your case. Right? And there are 3 hand-ins for your case. One in the beginning of the semester, one, a really big one so a small one in the beginning, a really big one towards the end, and then a smaller one at the end. So let's talk about what those deliverables are. Well, they're called project plan, systems analysis, and proposed solution. Okay? And a systems analyst would probably have to put something like this together for a real project, right? Now, we're going to be practicing the subparts that go into these during our skills practice assignments, okay? So if you can do well on the skills practice assignments, and then you can pull these reports together, the skills that you're learning in the skills practice assignments should allow you to do these. So what's in a project plan? That's the earliest one that we have. Identifying the subject organization and its stakeholders, identifying the nature and scope of the problem or opportunity to be addressed, presenting a plan for further requirement solicitation and gathering. Okay, what more work has to be done to work with the stakeholders to get all the requirements or the details of the requirements? Okay. The systems analysis, okay. Here are the parts of it that you're going to produce. You're going to produce a context diagram. That's data flow diagramming. We'll learn how to do that. A use case diagram or diagrams. We're going to learn how to do that next. Use case specifications. We're going to learn how to do that next. An activity diagram. We're going to learn how to do that next. A conceptual data model, so we're going to learn conceptual data modeling next, and a state machine diagram, which is a diagram that we use to help improve the goodness of our conceptual data model. Okay, so those are all individual things that you'll be handing in skills practice, and of course you'll be doing them for your real project and collecting them up and handing them in as this systems analysis report. And then the very last thing that we do, you're going to do a proposed solution in which you're going to describe the technical architecture, and you're going to show some screen designs for it and some report designs. And again, we're going to practice those activities in skills practice, and then of course pretty much immediately after that you're going to do that for your own assigned individual project. I'm going to be publishing instructions for each of the 3 reports, grading rubrics for each of the 3 reports individually. This description here in the syllabus is a big picture description so you can see what's going on in the course. Okay? Only submit your own work. So what's really interesting here is that I really want to encourage you to collaborate, especially with other people that are in your group, okay? At the same time, I do want you to hand in your own work, right? So for your projects, this is going to be pretty easy because you're all going to be working on different cases. Everybody in your group is going to be working on a different case. So you can certainly see their work and comment on that, and they can see your work and comment on that. And if you happen to see what they've done and just get inspired by it and go, oh wow, I could do more than that. I could organize this like that. Great. You know, I like to see good work, right? I'd rather see good work than bad, okay? And so if you get an idea from one of the people on your team and it's a good idea, well, I think we've had a big success. I don't want you to copy their prose. I don't want you to copy their diagram details, but could you be inspired by the style of their prose or the organization of a section in the report, or kind of their diagramming style? Yeah, that's great. That's all part of learning, right? It's a little bit harder when we're all working on the same thing. When we're working on our skills practice, okay? I think that the thing to do is to maybe show other people what you're stuck on. Okay, we don't want to be showing what we're handing in for these things in detail because we're all supposed to be handing in the same thing. But can we say, I don't know if they're supposed to work like this or supposed to work like that. Here's a kind of a section of what I'm doing. Am I getting the technique right? And then having somebody else say, "Oh no, the lines don't go like that, Kevin. They go like this." So probably less sharing of actual work on the skills practice, but maybe sharing snippets and subparts. Now, a couple of years ago, I had a guy who thought, well, we could work on this as a team. So I'd get together with people on my team, and we'd come up with one solution, and we all would hand it in. So thus comes this part of the syllabus that says only submit your own work. So having everybody submit the same thing or substantially the same thing is not consistent with academic honesty. So there's a nuance to this level of collaboration, and if you have any questions on it, just ask me. I coach people through these kinds of questions all the time. All right? So let's look at the grading. First of all, we have the participation. Okay, I'm going to add up all those points, and what I do is I find groups. I find, I typically find some people who have astronomical numbers. So all high numbers, regardless of their magnitude, usually get 100. So that might be somebody with 200 points gets 100, and maybe somebody with 50 points would get 100 too, if that compares very, very favorably with the rest of the group. And then I work my way down. I find the next group, and they're 95, and then I find the next cluster, and they're 90. Down at the bottom, people who don't participate at all usually get something like 60. Or 59, okay? And then we go up from there, okay? So it's kind of like maybe grading on the curve, but I don't say that it's quite so statistically driven. It's more kind of grouping driven, okay? I think it's pretty fair, and it's not too hard to wind up towards the top. Quizzes and skills practice assignments, they count for 40%. Each quiz or skills practice assignment has a target points of 100, and so we take all of them and we average them out. Okay, so the quizzes and the skills practice assignments all have the same weight. So if there are say let's come up with a round number. If there were 10 of them, they'd all be worth 10% of that 40%. Okay, and you earn a weighted average. And the project assignment deliverables, that parenthetical 50% says 50% of your overall grade is your project, right? And what are the components? Well, the project plan is 5% of your grade. The systems analysis report is 35% of your grade, and the proposed solution is 10% of your grade. Now, I do this course a little different than some professors do. Some professors have you work on, say, your final project, and if you hand it in and you haven't done a good job, they'll give you another chance. Okay? I give all my chances in the skills practice assignments. Okay? And that's why I encourage everybody to do them completely in good faith and hand them in on time. And they can have all kinds of bad experiences when that's happening, and they can still, if they do it all, if they hand it in on time, they can get 85, which is a B. Okay, but on the project, it's sink or swim. You get one chance. Okay, now you get a chance to show it to people before you hand it in. Okay, I'm pretty generous with people being able to compare work within their groups. So essentially, half the grade is sink or swim, and you gotta start working on the project early, and you have to reach out to people on your team to get kind of other points of view. A really typical thing, I've seen teams where people work with each other very effectively, and they help each other a lot. Okay, people are often kind of numb to what they're not getting, right? And other people can say, Kevin, I don't think you have the style of this yet. Take a look at this and take a look at that. Okay, so you can really learn a lot there. Okay, so if you're working on your project all along, if you are keeping in contact with people on your team, you're going to do well. And then I've seen people who thought the team was a waste, and they just get crushed. Okay, so I mean, I've seen teams that didn't really work with each other, and they're 20, 30 points behind the other people in the class because they just don't know what they don't have there. So this whole team aspect to it is pretty important stuff. And, well, enough said. The letter grades, this conversion of number grades to letter grades, I got this from a colleague when I came to SOAS 4 years ago, and it hasn't changed, and I didn't invent it, and I'm sure it's pretty close for everybody, so you shouldn't be too surprised by it. And now we come to the last section here, and this is kind of an interesting section because, we call this in documents where we have some parts that should always be the same, we call it boilerplate. And you might kind of hear that and go, well, it's all the same, I don't have to read it or whatever. Well, the reason it's boilerplate is it's so important we want to make it as much as possible the same in all of the syllabi, just to make sure that people get the message the right way all the time. So it's a boilerplate, not because it's important, but because it's so important. And then the topics are pretty important stuff too. Things like students with disabilities, religious observances, students called to active military duty, incompletes. You'd be interested to find out that the circumstances in which you can get a grade of incomplete in a class at UWM is pretty narrow, more narrow than at a lot of other universities. Discriminatory conduct, such as sexual harassment. Well, this has to do with our learning environment being safe and welcoming, which is really important to us. Academic misconduct, which is really important stuff. And then things about how to complain if you think you have a complaint, and how to appeal a grade if you think you have an appealable grade. So you may have seen this exact language before, but give it a look, particularly if one of these paragraphs applies to you, and also particularly if you need help with this. Okay, so if you have a question about a religious observance, or you feel you've been subject to discriminatory conduct, how do you deal with that? Well, talk to me, right? Now, I don't solve all these things. I typically refer them to the right people, but I'm here to help. Okay, so give this a serious read, know what it's all about, and know that I'm here to help, and certainly the rest of the people at SOAS and the university are here to help as well. Well, that's the syllabus. So I'm hoping that you've got a pretty comprehensive idea about the course and its components and all of those things. And I'm looking forward to working with you throughout the semester. I'm particularly looking forward to reading the introductions on the forum in this coming week. Feel free to be in touch, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye for now.